There's been a lot of discussions and fuss over turf war recently with Splatoon 3, more specifically that players are not painting their base turf and thus they keep losing their matches. This got to the point that content creators even keep getting messages to make videos telling people to start painting the turf. Not that it would help that much. But hello there, it's Hasme here, and I'm going to try to chime in on this topic and say my opinions on the matter, but let it not be on me, alright? So here it is.
Grisco Industries would like to formally request all Splatville citizens to be as kind to paint your base turf. Thank you for your time.
But seriously, is that really why you keep losing turf wars? Let's talk about it a little bit, because in my opinion, that is certainly not the main reason I keep seeing more and more thrown matches. The two reasons in my opinion that most teams lose are 1. Not rushing to take control of the middle and splat more, and 2. Pushing too much. Now to get it out of the way immediately, if a match is simply unbalanced or you get wiped out in the last 30 seconds and they make a huge comeback, those are exceptions, so I wouldn't consider them too much. Let's try to stick to the basics first and foremost. Since Turf War is all about which team has the most painting on the stage, and keep in mind only the ground counts here. Any walls painted don't matter, so don't even waste your time. But since it's all about the paint, it makes sense that we all want to paint as much as possible, especially on the home turf, as it sometimes gets forgotten and you realize even though you've put up a decent fight in the middle, there's a huge patch missing at your base. This results in having players in more and more matches spending the first 40 seconds of a game inking every millimeter of the base. And is that better? No, it's actually worse and pretty bad to do in general. So then why are people rushing to the middle at the beginning? The way Splatoon maps are generally designed is that both teams start at a very advantageous base with a lot of high ground, and as you keep going towards the middle of the map, you keep losing that high ground and advantage until the very middle, which most of the time is the most advantageous position to hold and also gives your team the most amount of space to move and fight, also the most valuable space to ink. Knowing that, the team that can take the middle at start will likely have the better chance of winning teamfights and getting more splats than the enemy team, allowing them to not only control more areas that can be painted, but they will also have more time thanks to those splats in fact to paint turf. If anyone in your team has long-range guns such as chargers or splatlings, this advantage is doubled even, as those weapons can absolutely dominate a stage from a good position as long as their team supports them and keeps them safe. It's just nuts what they can do. So now we understand why it's so good to hold the middle and try to get there as soon as possible, but that doesn't really answer what I said about why inking your base is actually bad. Now let me answer a question with a question. What do you do at the start when you're rushing to the middle of every map? You paint a trail all the way to the middle, yes, and it is as simple as that, on why I wouldn't recommend spending any more time than necessary painting your home turf, since you can do it anyway. Every single time you get splatted, you have an opportunity to paint a whole bunch of your home base as you go back towards the middle, and if everyone does that, it's more than enough to have your home completely painted by the end of the match. There's also another advantage to not inking your whole base in one go, which is the other thing that you do while advancing to the center of the stage, and that is charging up your special. You can do this every single time you get splatted and until your home base still has non-painted ground. For most weapons, painting all the way to the center of the stage is roughly the equivalent of charging up your special completely, ready to splat some enemies and win back the middle. This is extremely valuable, especially if you have an effective special for your weapon or you need to push the enemy team out of a really good position. Just imagine having Tenta-missiles the moment you get to middle and you push out the opponent from a tower or from ink zone. It's just absolutely nuts. Now what happens if you decide to paint your base on the other hand at the beginning of the match? You basically deny your team from the opportunity of charging up their specials and having a powerful tool to use as they get into a fight, making it a completely detrimental action to just ink around the base. It achieves nothing but rob your team from free space to charge up your special without having to worry about enemies. So instead of thinking about your base as a waste of time, think of it as a tool that you can use to your own benefit in order to win easier in your matches and get an edge over the others. There is of course a big exception when your team is dominating so much that you don't even have the time to ink your base because you're never splatted. It happens a few times until the balance sets for Splatoon 3, rare, but it still happens. Which brings us to the second problem, that is pushing too much. We probably all had a game before where we were dominating so much through the game, barely got splatted at all, yet at the very end they managed to push back at the final seconds, and even though you thought they couldn't paint too much, they still won because they had more turf. How did that happen? I can already hear the chorus of "because you didn't paint your base," which is partially true, but it's more of an effect than a cause. So the real question is, why did you not paint your base? To answer this, let's go back to what I said at the beginning of the video about maps in Splatoon. I mentioned each map is roughly designed with the idea of both teams starting with an advantageous position, and as you go to the middle you keep losing that, except for the very middle where it's usually the best area to hold, right? So immediately, the problem that I see in a lot of turf wars is that teams are giving up their good position for worse, just in order to mindlessly push and trying to spawn camp the enemy team, which is just bad for multiple reasons. First, you're giving up the easiest to defend position in the whole map for the potential of a few splats, and giving the enemy team a better chance on the other hand to do a complete wipeout on you and your team, since they now likely have the high ground and better position. Not to mention if they respawn, they will be right there to punish you. Second, you're also narrowing the amount of space you have, the amount of space you can ink, and also the amount of valuable space you can ink. I see it all the time that people love to push into the enemy base and ink their turf behind their back, rubbing their palms together on their evil plan. And I admit it sometimes works, especially in the final seconds. But what actually happens most of the time instead when you push into enemy base is that every spot you paint gets painted back a second later and you're achieving literally nothing. It's the easiest part of the whole map for your enemy team to paint. So I said this word multiple times, so what does it really mean when I say valuable space to paint? It is the areas that the enemy team has a harder time to reach to fully repaint, which is around the middle of the map and closer to your home. As you're pushing the enemy team to their base, if there's any spot behind you that is not fully your color, you're essentially doing them a favor and you're giving up your advantage for the match. Instead, imagine holding the middle of the map. You have the best spot that you can be in, you have the most space you can paint, and you are close enough to your home in case anyone gets splatted, they can get back in time and safely since you hold the middle. On top of that, everyone can paint the home turf on their way back, and each time you manage to splat the enemy team, or you get full wipeout, you have even more time to spend on patching those spots on your side. This is why professional teams usually don't push much past the middle in turf wars, not just because matches are hard, but because it makes no strategic sense most of the time. So in the end, is it really about inking your base? Absolutely not. It's about moving around the map more intelligently rather than just throwing it all in there and whatever happens, happens. It's about taking control of the middle and using the space behind you as efficiently as possible, because that unpainted turf is to your advantage until the final 30 seconds of the match. Of course, it's not like Turf War is going to be better anytime soon. It's the worst competitive map for a very good reason. It's mostly for fun. But I think it's still a very good game mode to learn to focus on the big picture and learn the mechanics of a game mode rather than just YOLO. Since even in ranked, I still see people in A ranked, where I'm currently, completely ignoring the objective and wander around aimlessly doing nothing. So the overall message of this video is rather to think through what the point of the game modes are, in this case Turf War, and also what are the different aspects of Splatoon. Why do you ink? Do you really need to spawn camp the others? Do you really need that one splat, or could you stay where you are, where it's safe? These are all very interesting and cool thoughts in my opinion. When you can enter the zen state of being thoughtful and not impulsive or instinctive, it's really fun to be able to do something because you know it's giving you an advantage over just hoping that you will win this round and gamble it all away. Either way, I hope this video helped you understand Turf War more and on why you might be losing more or just have fun around the current ink your base meme. If you like this video on the other hand, I have a lot more similar content on my channel, and I also do a bunch of guides for Splatoon, so feel free to check it out, and if you choose to subscribe, it's greatly appreciated. I think it would be pretty cool to make more similar videos on all different types of games in Splatoon, from ranked to even Salmon Run, so I might do that in the near future if it helps more people enjoy the game, and I think there's a lot of cool concepts to talk about here, from what weapons are useful for which maps and modes, or do weapons even change your playstyle? But for now, that is it for this video on why you might be losing in turf wars. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.